What's up? What's up? What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another Vanguard live pod. Super excited to be back. Got some great content to go over today. How you doing, Zach?
Doing pretty good. Casually concerned about the cat. We might need to perform an exorcism at some time during the podcast. She's definitely on one. Our resident Vanguard kitty Cherry, always in the background, fucking running around. It looks like she's particularly enjoying herself this cloudy, cold, dreary day in Kansas City. But we've got a great fucking show planned, and yeah, super excited to get rocking and rolling.
Absolutely. Sorry about that. Huge shout out to the patron community. As always, you guys know the drill. We do like to start our live streams with a big shout out to the patron community, the comrades that are helping this show stay afloat amid all the algorithmic censorship and suppression that our channel, like many others, is experiencing. It really helps us stay around. Like I said, we would not be able to do the show without you guys. So a sincere shout out to the patrons. The link for that is in the description if you guys watching would like to join the patron community. As I said, really great way to support the show. We would not be able to do the Vanguard without the recurring contributions from patrons like the ones up on the screen right now. So if you'd like a spot of your own on the shout out screen and also access to our Discord server and other pretty cool benefits, then hit up that link in the description. It's always going to be in the description, guys. So yeah, just a huge shout out. Thank you so much, guys, for supporting the show. It means everything. And like I said, we would not be able to do this without you guys. So huge shout out. But yeah, we got some awesome topics to get into today. I was really pleased to see one of our favorites, Chris Hedges, back on the Jimmy Dore show a couple days ago now. Always really appreciate seeing him make the interview circuit, make the rounds. And as usual, I thought Jimmy did a great job interviewing him. Repeated guest, obviously, on the JD show. So always great to see him back. Had a lot of interesting stuff to discuss, especially because we've just seen basically the entire archive of On Contact episodes, his former RT America show, scrubbed from YouTube and basically the internet writ large, which is a huge loss. And of course, we're really hoping those get reinstated somehow, or that someone's able to upload them in some form. Because if you guys have been watching the show for a while, you'll know that we were huge fans of On Contact. It was a great value to our show. We used it all the time in our programming. We would play clips and react to them. Just such a great show, such a great resource rather, and such a font of insight from various guests and from Hedges himself. So we're really hoping that gets restored. And like I said, excited to react to some of this interview on the Jimmy Dore show, as well as a new interview on the Bad Faith podcast hosted by Briahna Joy Gray that I'm equally excited to get into with Representative Khanna. Definitely gets pretty interesting, a little bit confrontational. So super excited to discuss that as well. But either way, lots of good stuff to get into today. Is there anything in specific you think we should start with, Zach?
Yeah, let's go ahead and start with the Jimmy Dore, Chris Hedges thing. Look, obviously, it's no secret that our channel doesn't hide our criticisms of anyone. Never bite my tongue, neither do you, Gavin. And so obviously that creates like a little bit of a division. But I have nothing but positive things to say about what I witnessed in this Jimmy Dore episode. I think he does a great job talking to Chris Hedges. And as you mentioned, I've been super excited for the first post-RT censorship big interview with Chris Hedges to drop. It looks like he went on the Jimmy Dore show. And just to be able to hear his perspective on it. Obviously, we reacted to the PC posted Dashir post on being disappeared. You guys can check that out on Callin. But was really excited to hear him, flesh out his thoughts on the way the world's going. How you, can't fight the, unsavory elements of society with misinformation that'll always, back you into a corner and trap you. And I just thought that he brings his, tremendous insight from decades of reporting on issues that, get you fired from the news organization. I mean, imagine coming off of a Pulitzer Prize in 2001 for helping cover the 9/11 attacks, which, for people who are our age, it's easy to forget if you don't constantly remind yourself of the hysterics. And Gavin and I, it's burned into our brain because we got to live through the hysterics of post 9/11. I feel like for maybe 4 or 5 years longer than everybody else here in Kansas. Or when we were growing up in Kansas, it lasted for a really long time. Then 2 years later, after winning that, massive Pulitzer Prize, he's fired because he won't go along with this bogus invasion of Iraq on the weapons of mass destruction he knows there's no evidence for. He's a fluent Arabic speaker. He's been the the Middle East bureau chief of the New York Times. So this is all fucking absurd. So this is a guy that's proved his credentials time and time again. Was really excited to hear from him, and I thought that this was a great chat.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, if you guys haven't seen the entire interview, I would urge you to check it out. They talk a lot about the deleting of Chris Hedges' RT show, which we're going to get into a little bit more later. But the specific timestamp that I selected for us to react to is pretty good. They start off talking a little bit about the potential of revolution here in America. So I thought that was a great place to start, and we can just react along the way for as long as we see fit. But anyway, let's get right into this. I thought this was a great interview, like I said.
What? So the people will never rise up in America? Is that's just never going to happen?
I don't know. Don't you're gonna ruin my night. I don't know. I mean, I've covered revolutions, and it's funny. You can never predict them. The tinder is there. You never know what ignites it. And then once it erupts, you never know what direction it's going to go. They have this kind of spontaneous life force. So I used to be pretty bleak. And then Occupy happened. Occupy got crushed, of course,
right,
courtesy of Barack Obama in a concerted national effort to shut down every single Occupy encampment.
And by the way, he brings up a good point here, something that I think needs to be, reckoned with a little bit more by the left, which is that it's not so much a question of will the people rise up, will the people revolt, but it's more of a question of when they do rise up, when they do revolt, how are we going to avoid being instantly crushed by the government, which at this point, has more than the means to do so, as we saw over 10 years ago in Occupy Wall Street, as was just referenced there. So a lot of times lefties, revolutionary-minded leftists like to get hung up on the question of, how and when are we going to convince the masses to rise up, to actually, take their grievances with our government to the streets and demand, a real response. But again, the issue is, and the problem that really needs to be reckoned with here as a movement is, in the event that does happen, as it already has a couple times. I mean, I remember a couple summers ago when there are protests all across the country. How are we going to reckon with the government response, the crackdown, which is going to accompany that, again, as a response? And that's an interesting question, one that I'm not sure I have the answer for. And I think that that's a huge, huge hurdle in our way, obviously, but still something that I don't hear enough about or addressed.
Oh, absolutely. And I think you're 100% correct to bring up the George Floyd protest, May 2020, right? We all remember that. It was the single largest human protest across the nation, at least the largest protest in 50 years. I've heard people say it was the largest ever, who's to say, right? I didn't count myself, but it was a massive wave. It took across the country, small towns, big cities. Everybody was in the streets singing a chorus of one fucking demand: police reform, defund the police, Black Lives Matter. Fucking oceans of people, guys. Kansas City is not that fucking progressive of a town. We had people flooding the streets, right? Flooding the streets. Cop cars set on fire.
It looked like a war zone, a straight up war zone.
Yeah. People were pissed off. We were making our fucking grievances known, right? They were using chemical weapon attacks on protesters. Like, this was off the charts. Like, this was a real deal protest, and it was happening everywhere, right? Completely squashed, completely trampled. No results from it. Absolutely none, actually. More police funding, more, it's crazy, actually. This was everybody was not just police funding, but remember when Donald Trump was president, ICE funding was like the one issue that AOC was nonstop fucking championing on. That was like her issue. She was like, we need to defund ICE. We need to abolish ICE, actually, was what she was constantly refraining. Now Joe Biden planning on expanding the budget of ICE to millions more dollars than it ever was under Donald Trump. Not a peep from the Democrats. So I think it's safe to say that all of those, all of those demands failed, right? Across the board, however you could describe defunding any police force, we failed. Did not happen. So it's not even just about getting people in the streets. It's not just about people getting out there, you also have that added element of being tactical, and you also have the element of we have a militarized police force that is willing to do literally anything to protect the interest of the capitalist overlords and oligarchs and all that kind of shit. So yeah, we're in a really, really fucking shitty situation, as Chris Hedges will continue to opine about.
Absolutely. And someone was saying that the LA riots of 92 were worse, or at least bigger in scale than the George Floyd protests. But I would push back and say that the 92 riots in LA, they may have been bigger in Los Angeles, but they didn't, go around the entire country like we saw with the George Floyd protests. Every single major city and even minor cities taking up and, taking to the streets, participating in this demonstration. So that's what I would respond to with that. Also, I turned down Zach's audio a little bit, Disco Phil, so let me know if that helps. Hopefully got those audio levels evened out a bit. Don't worry about it, Zach. I adjusted your audio via StreamYard, so it should be fine going forward, but let us know if you continue to hear any issues. Always trying to stay cognizant of that. But yeah, let's watch some more of this interview. Gets pretty interesting here.
I still hold out the hope. Definitely there will be blowback. But of course, and history has shown, it can very well be a right-wing fascistic blowback. The blowback in Weimar was the Communist Party was in fact quite large. But in the end, the oligarchic elites, when you have those kinds of divisions, they'll always side with the right to crush the left. And that's, of course, the Social Democrats. They created the Freikorps to crush the Spartacus and the uprisings after World War I. And then, of course, the Freikorps became the Nazis that ended up shipping them all off to concentration camps. So I've just been a reporter too long to predict, but things are very volatile. There's a lot of anger. That anger is legitimate. These people have been rendered invisible. That's the other thing the media has done. The working class, the working poor are utterly invisible because you can't sell commercials if you're actually explaining what people are enduring in these urban hells. We're terrorized by police. I don't use that word lightly. I teach in a prison. Terrorized by police. We'll see it when they erupt in Ferguson or something, and there's
clearly Chris Hedges hasn't been watching the most recent Applebee's commercials because they don't give a shit. I just can't get that. He was like, you can't sell commercials when you're now they are so fucking cold-hearted. Now they are so removed from the daily lives. And I also think that news has become such just a spectacle of like, oh, look at this, look at how shitty it is over here. So much of the time that it just bam, bombing landscape of devastation in Ukraine, people suffering. But if you're hungry and looking for a family night, get 4 appetizers for the price of 2 at Applebee's. Wow, you can get your baby back ribs or whatever the fuck. It's so patently like fucking, I don't know, Orwellian. It doesn't even seem like the correct word. It's so hyper corporate, so commercialized, and just completely removed from anything that resembles humanity. It's so fucked.
Stores burning, but there's no context. Nobody ever understands why people were pushed to that boiling point. It's just, the actions are kind of certified by the mainstream media as incomprehensible, and therefore these people are incomprehensible. So we're in very, very serious trouble. The establishment, the ruling elites no longer have any credibility. And I'm talking about the establishment Republican Party, establishment Democratic Party. You have liberal elites that are frightened, and their response is to engage in harsher and harsher forms of censorship rather than actually holding political leaders to account for real social change. If you want to break the back of the neo-fascism, which will come dressed in Christian garb, and I wrote a book on this called American Fascists, the Christian Right and the War in America, and just as a caveat, I graduated from Harvard Divinity School. My father was a minister. I come out of a religious tradition. These people are heretics. They're not Christians. They've acculturated the worst aspects of American imperialism, white supremacy, and capitalism with the Bible. I mean, Jesus didn't come to make us rich, just for starters. So, but that is, it will be its ideological veneer, and I see us moving quite, with quite frightening speed in that direction, and a failed democracy is ultimately driven by the inability or an ineffectual liberal elite. Richard Rorty wrote a book about his last book, Achieving Our Country, where he said that that bankrupt intellectual, and I wrote a book called Death of the Liberal Class that also examined that issue, but that bankrupt liberal elite, which rhetorically mouths values, but in fact betrays them. So I mean, they talk about free speech, they want censorship, etc. Then you build a counter social movement from the right that not only turns on liberals but turns on those values themselves, because of course those who espouse them don't actually mean them, and that's kind of where we are.
Yes. So our government, I don't know if you said it or Thomas Frank, but they know, they pay fealty to democracy. Our government elected officials, they know the words of democracy and liberalism, but they govern exactly because we don't live in a democracy. We live in an oligarchy, which means that capitalists are actually running the government. So. And now, in the middle of what they considered a deadly pandemic.
When you listen to Khanna, you'll learn a little bit more and see firsthand what it's like when capitalists run the government. But I digress.
And I've been told that it was the most deadly thing, and hundreds of thousands of people are dying, and they still wouldn't give people health care. The capitalists still would not give people health care in the middle of that. And now they want you to be angry at Putin, who actually does give his people health care. Right. Isn't that weird? And so isn't that called end-stage capitalism?
And that's a great point that Jimmy just made there, something that I think is not brought up enough. It's like, for all the atrocities that Russia is committing, many of which we've, talked about at length and condemned at length, it is true that they have universal health care. We don't. Our government has the blood of at least 20 to 40,000 Americans on its hands every single year. I mean, what is that if not a genocide of the poor? What is that if not a massacre of people's, literal humanity? This is state-sponsored violence, but it's never discussed in those terms by people like Khanna, who is out here talking about how America has done more good than harm on the global stage, in modern American history. So again, it's all just a matter of perspective and how you look at this stuff. But, when you think about it that way, it is an atrocity. It's absolutely an atrocity. The American government is, the government is literally preventing people from receiving the care they need. That sounds a lot like violence to me. So I don't know what else to call it, but it's absolutely correct for him to acknowledge that. And, maybe our country should be invaded by some other developed country in order to liberate the uninsured, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's so easy to make this argument if you just replace the word like rich people with king or queen, monarchy of some kind, right? Whatever, the name of it would be. And you just say, oh, yeah, well, because the monarchy owns so many of the houses, owns so many of the living spaces in this, country, and you have to be able to pay the monarchy's tax in order to have a home and be sheltered. Oh, well, the monarchy is clearly keeping it at a cost prohibitive level for their own exploitative benefits. This keeps people literally dying every single year. You can look up the statistics. It's an astronomical number in the most, rich and developed country in the world, the United States, that we would still have people number in the hundreds, people who die every year of related to homelessness. And that's just one example. Again, Gavin made the example of, lack of access to health insurance, all of these things. And then that's if you just take our domestic issues, right? And we treat our domestic population infinitely better than we treat the rest of the world that we're quasi-occupying, right? We will just slaughter them to death. We will starve them. We will cripple them. We will prevent their children from accessing medicine to devastate them and be cruel to them. That's just the world we've created. And if you start looking at it objectively, like, oh yeah, using any logic that could be offered by any U.S. representative, to invade or solve a problem in another country could easily be wielded by some other country into invading and solving our problem of America. So it's a completely hollow argument, and I, you know, obviously it doesn't have any water, but people still drink it, you know.
What do we have? A third of all global COVID deaths?
I think
Less than
so.
5%
Yes.
I mean, well, that in and of itself. I mean, actually, you know, Biden's COVID policy is worse than
Worse than
Trump's.
Trump's.
That's just ridiculous.
Well, you know,
Uh,
they say they did a study. This was almost a year ago now. That 200,000 deaths, when the deaths were at 600,000, that 200,000 of those deaths could have been prevented if we had universal health care or
Of course,
Medicare
of
for
course.
all. And guess who never mentions that? Nobody in power. Fauci never mentions Medicare for all. The guy from the NIH, the woman from the CDC, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, none of them. Nobody on television, Chris Hayes, Rachel Maddow, none of the Don Lemon, Aaron Anderson, they never mentioned Medicare for all could save 200,000 lives. And that's suspect to me, which tells you that they're just tools of the big pharma once again.
And I think that this resonates with a lot of his audience. So if people are skeptical as to why a lot of people feel the way they do about, you know, vaccine rollout and the policies that have been instituted, I think you should really take a listen here to, you know, what Jimmy is saying, because I think he's making a really fair point. And obviously we've been, you know, critical of some of his coverage, so I want to give him, you know, the props when he deserves it. And I think right here, that's extremely fair. Yeah, you really want to tell me that you care about, you know, X, Y, and Z? Well, why didn't you institute the one policy that we already know could have saved 200,000 lives? And that was, you know, months ago. How many more lives could have been saved? We've had over 1 million deaths from COVID. I'm not fucking kidding you guys. Over 1 million deaths from COVID. That's like, what, 0.25% of our population gone, snap, fucking from COVID. I mean, look, now a lot of people argue, well, a lot of those people would have died from other things. Let's say half then. 500,000 people dead from a fucking disease. Like, holy shit, man. And they're completely right to point out that Joe Biden has done absolutely nothing. And I think a big reason why his approval rating is so low, and Trump actually, according to a recent poll that Gavin and I were just looking at, is actually beating him versus Biden, Kamala Harris this time in the rematch. He's actually beating Biden because this election, as we told you guys so many fucking times, was about COVID. It was about ending it. It was about a return to normalcy. It was about, let me just live my fucking life again and stop thinking about all this shit. And then what Joe Biden did, he was like, yeah, we're not gonna talk about this. So, you know, people are still gonna get sick. People are still gonna die. We're just going to pretend it's not an issue. We're going to do exactly what Trump did, except we're not giving you any money. We are going to be the, you know, the bearers of death, all the fucking crazy shit that we call Donald Trump. We're going to do all of that, except we're not going to give you any money. We're going to give you less money than we told you we were going to give you, actually. Oh, and also, we're going to spend all that money that we were spending, keeping you guys alive and afloat and in your fucking homes. Yeah, we're just going to send it over to Ukraine because that's more important, because we're the world's police. We're the sheriffs. We're the top dog in town. I mean, can you fucking believe this shit? No wonder people hate this shithole country.
100%. And never have the progressives in Congress, the supposed left flank, been more pathetic than they are now in the face of this impending inevitable disaster that everyone knows is coming. The Democrats are 100% going to get wiped out in the midterms. Biden will likely lose re-election in 2024. And again, the progressives are sitting on their hands. They're not sounding the alarms. AOC gave a milquetoast interview recently to the New York Magazine, I believe, where she said that we're in trouble. But it's like, what you gonna fucking do about it, AOC? We agree. The Democrats are in trouble. Why aren't you doing anything? Why aren't you running around like your head is cut off or your hair is on fire, you know, screaming at the president, screaming at the press? Why aren't you doing the things the American people elected you to do? Why aren't you doing the things you literally promised to do? Biden promised to forgive at least some student loan debt. Still hasn't fucking happened, right? Why is he not doing the bare minimum things he could do via executive action in order to alleviate the suffering in this country, which would also help him and his party in the midterms and in 2024? And again, the squad, the progressives, totally feckless as usual, just complete, you know, basically just controlled opposition at this point, if you ask me. They're absolutely doing nothing, channeling all of that progressive energy into a dead end. So yeah, it's so disappointing to see this happen. And especially with this, recent charade of doing a House Oversight Committee hearing on the House Medicare for All bill, conveniently dusting off a popular, proposal because we're in the midterm election year. Obviously, they're not going to do anything with it. Obviously, it's just, dangling a shiny object in front of our faces and hoping that, we'll come and vote for them again. But we saw what happened in 2021. We saw what happened when they had the chance to actually, push this legislation or to force the vote. They didn't fucking do it. They're never going to fucking do it. It's all a goddamn charade, which is why it's so hard to have any faith in the progressive electoral movement at this point. It's so hard to have any, excitement or faith in the progressive electoral movement right now, because again, nothing has resulted from this.
Yeah, you ready to put your tinfoil hat on with me for just 1 second, everybody? Let's just get them on really quickly. I hated this argument back in the day. I thought it was intellectually lousy, but I'm starting to fucking sympathize with it so much that maybe I was just wrong. So I'm starting to think that really there's this weird pressure that they don't like from having power, the Democrats writ large. They don't like the actual responsibility of governance. What they like is fundraising off of the boogeyman, Donald Trump, man, obviously, right? And at first I was like, well, it can't be that bad. They can't be that fucking feckless. They can't be, but no, they really are. And I don't even, I'm mostly joking about the tinfoil hat because I think this is just
I was like, that's not a conspiracy.
Yeah. But it's just like, guys, the reality is that I think they're breathing a sigh of relief that Donald Trump might come back to the fucking presidency. Here's another tidbit that's a little bit of a side, but it all works together, right? We all know that this is the same team. CNN Plus just launched, and they did an interesting segment on this on Breaking Points, right? Where they were talking about how they're doing a lifetime 50% discount if you sign up right now, and it costs you $2.99. So clearly they're just trying to inflate their numbers so they can be like, see, look at how many people have signed up for our failing, miserable subscription service. And Sagar was making the excellent point that in media, especially at like established media, at a level that, Breaking Points is at, or CNN or whatever, they don't necessarily do discounts and things like that, because it's like, okay, it's like, this is how much it cost us to make the show. This is how much we charge people. This is how much everybody gets paid. Yada, yada, yada. It's not like, I'm at a grocery store and I already bought these things and I have to sell them. Otherwise I take a huge L. So we drop the price 70%. The customer's happy. I move it faster. That doesn't happen in media. There's no retail space. So doing, sales and discounts is just a surefire giveaway that you're expecting it to be a disaster in your rollout. CNN's not a new company, right? They don't have to build brand recognition. People already know what the fuck they're getting, and they're making it absolutely clear that they don't want it. And it makes sense that they would want Donald Trump to be back because he was the perfect boon for their rating. Same with MSNBC. And honestly, to an extent, I think Fox News even liked having Donald Trump, though they're capable of succeeding in the time of Joe Biden by just dunking on him and doing the thank you, or what is it? Brandon, let's go Brandon shit. I couldn't even think of it for a second. Let's go Brandon shit. Whatever. I think they even appreciated having Donald Trump be more relevant. I think people are kicking themselves for banning Donald Trump from Twitter in a really weird, selfish way because they needed him to be the target of their ire. They needed him to be there so they could have their resistance. Now it's resistance to what? It's kind of why Donald Trump failed in his second attempt to run it off. Is that you can't keep America great. No, all those people you conned into voting to you, their life is still dog shit, dude. Yeah, keep America great. It's not great. That's why you won them over in the first place. The Democrats were like, oh, your life is fucking terrible because of Trump now. Well, actually, we need Trump back so that we have a reason why your life is still terrible, because we're sure as shit not going to fix it. We just want to drink champagne and eat caviar.
Yeah, 100%. And I've been thinking this for a while, but I'm more certain now than ever. I have a theory that the social media companies are going to unban Donald Trump at some point, presumably when he announces his presidential run in 2024. But I totally think that Twitter, Facebook, I think they're going to revoke his ban because, as we've seen demonstrated over and over again, the social media companies are thoroughly in bed with the mainstream media. And as you said, Zach, the mainstream media needs Trump. They need him to feed off of, specifically MSNBC, because their ratings are in decline. You know, they're losing Rachel Maddow, who's their only actual, you know, sticking point, the only thing that people actually come back for. They need Donald Trump. They need Donald Trump to rile up their audience, to keep them coming back, to keep them clicking. That's 100% how it's going to happen, in my opinion, at least. Do you think I'm correct there?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think I think we would be, I would be shocked if he didn't get, you know, unblocked as he runs for president another time. I think that all of those things point together. But you're right. This isn't, you know, like something we're coming out with no evidence. New York Post had it nuts and bolts. Hunter Biden's laptop. We all knew it was Hunter Biden's laptop. Literally 100 years of being a publication. Obviously, the New York Post is a rag sheet, but they had 100 years under their belt. You know,
I think they're like the first in America or something, like the very first publication.
Yeah, aren't they owned by the motherfucker that owns like Wall Street Journal and shit? Anyway,
I think they're owned by the same, like the Murdoch conglomerate that owns
Murdoch
Fox.
owns Wall Street Journal, I think too. Yeah, either way, he owns a bunch of shit. Either way, he's like the fucking paper baron of our time, news baron of our time. Anyway, obviously people know that. But yeah, no, I think that, you know, you banned from Twitter. You could not post about it. New York Post locked out of their account days before a fucking election. Okay, this is a big busy time when you're a news outlet. A presidential election is when you know, make you know, most of your clicks for the fucking 4 years after that. You know, that is when people care about the news the most, because they're about to go do the one political thing that most people do every 4 fucking years. Let's just be honest. They cast their vote for president and whatever's on the ballot during the presidential cycle. Way more people vote in the presidency than the midterms. Way more. So yeah, I think absolutely they're going to do that because they just need the ratings bump. If they don't do that, the only other thing I can think is that they try and make Ron DeSantis the new Trump, and they just go full on new Trump, new Trump, new Trump, new Trump, new Trump.
They're already doing that. I mean, the liberal media has empowered DeSantis to an extent that's honestly unquantifiable. They've given him so much free media, and it's so eerily similar to what they did with Donald Trump. Again, empowering this guy who, without them, I mean, it's not that he would be weak, but it's not also that he would be nearly as strong. So yeah, we're seeing the media do that 100% once again. And thank you, Mike H, by the way. It'll be the moderate Dems that lose their seats. Sure. I mean, most of the 90% at least of the Democratic Party is what I would consider moderate, at least probably 98%, to be honest. So yeah, most Democrats are moderate, and the ones that lose their seats will likely be moderates. Although, who's to say? I think they're all pretty vulnerable come the midterm elections. But thanks for the $2, Mike.
Yeah, I don't know. My guess is what he's saying is that he doesn't think the squad's going to be super vulnerable, and I don't know if there's a squad member that I think is going to get or not get reelected, but I also wouldn't be particularly shocked if one of them got bumped off. But do you think all the squad members will get reelected, Gavin?
I imagine the squad members will be fine. That did remind me. Did you see Ilhan Omar's challenger? Did you see that picture going around?
No.
She has this challenger that, like, the Republicans literally found a black Muslim woman who essentially even kind of looks like Ilhan Omar, and they're running her against Ilhan Omar. And it's I don't know. There's a photo going around. It's just so obvious they're trying to be like cool, but or you know, in with the times. I'll try to find the photo because it's honestly pretty funny. Some people were saying it's like the Waluigi to Ilhan Omar. Anyway, we can take a look at some more of this interview, although I do want to pull up that. Anyway, we can move on to the rest of this interview. Sorry, I didn't mean to sidetrack us. But thanks for the super chat, Mike. And also thank you, Hysteric Raider, for the $5. What is a congressperson but an over-glorified intern for future lobbying MSM pundits? Yep, the revolving door has never been more of a problem than it is now, and they don't even try to hide it. You know, it's just what you do. After you're a congressperson, you become a lobbyist, or you go work for MSNBC or Fox News. It's one or the other, and it almost always happens, again, completely shamelessly, completely out in the open. But yeah, let's take a look at some more of this interview. We can watch a couple more minutes before we move on.
Again.
Well, you know their tools because what are they making? How many millions of dollars?
Right, that's right.
Trust me, I've been a journalist my whole life. You don't make millions of dollars when you're a real journalist.
Ha! Thank God I'm a fake journalist, Chris. Thank God I'm a comedian. So I want to ask you before you go, what happened in Canada with the truckers? it was chilling to me the way Trudeau handled it. He instituted emergency powers, which were unconstitutional, and it was just about to be overturned in the Senate when he decided to rescind those. And what they did was, even though they were peaceful protesters, they went and they locked their bank accounts out, which is what's coming for anybody else. They all have to do is say you're a terrorist, which they did at Standing Rock. And they did that also to Amy Goodman. And they said that they're environmental terrorists. So now you have no rights. And now we can lock down. So does that make you afraid of digital IDs?
Yeah, it makes me afraid. Well, look, I mean, actually, Julian Assange wrote a pretty good little book about this, Cypherpunks. He kind of nailed it. I mean, he gets it. He understands these systems. Yeah, I mean, we're moving towards this kind of, I don't know, corporate totalitarianism. Remember when this was also WikiLeaks when they exposed on Clinton? She authorized the spying on Ban Ki-moon, but it wasn't just spying. It was like passwords, iris scans, voice everything. So yeah, that's they have these tools at their disposal. The tools the Stasi could never dream of, and they use them, and they're going to use them. And the worse things get, the more intrusive those forms of control will be. So yeah, I also found it kind of bizarre that didn't the left turn on the truckers?
Of course they did. You know why? Because they were told to by their corporate media, which is owned by the people who those truckers were protesting against. And with those truckers, by the way, had a higher vaccination rate than the general population in Canada, and nobody knew that, right? And,
but they couldn't make a living. I mean, let's be clear.
Right, that's right.
Because we're really talking about economic sabotage of their work.
That's right.
And
now you can't travel. They can immediately, if you have a digital ID and your driver's license is on that, your passport is on that, your bank account is on that, your vaccine status is on that, then they can just disappear you. You can be disappeared, which is what they did to those people. Those people couldn't buy gas because they couldn't get money to buy gas, so they couldn't travel. Those people couldn't.
And just to pause and jump in here, if you guys remembered, despite the fact that we weren't necessarily on board with the demands of the truckers in Canada, and I'll speak for myself, I don't remember exactly how you felt, Zach, but I remember being downright, appalled at the lengths at which the government in Canada was going to attempt to shut down this protest, which was largely peaceful. Like I said, didn't necessarily agree with all of their demands, or really even any of them, to be honest, but the protest was peaceful. There was not violence being committed there except for by the police. So I think they're 100% correct here to worry about the precedent that sets. And it's something that we've always tried to do as a podcast, is be above the partisan fray. We may not agree with the protesters in question, but we're going to support your right to protest, and we're going to oppose a government crackdown on your freedom of speech, your freedom to assemble. Again, regardless of if I'm 100% in agreement with the demands of said movement. I just think that's common sense, and the left is shooting itself in the foot. It did shoot itself in the foot by running cover for a government that was, cracking down on a protest of largely peaceful citizens.
Yeah, look, I wasn't a huge fan of the demands of the truckers, but we did report that, by and large, I think like 95% of the members of the truckers union are vaccinated. We also did a lot of reporting on some of the fucked up ways that truckers are exploited. We talked about how a lot of times they're kind of conned and trapped into these owner-operator scams where they're working for a broader country, but they're treated like business owners, and kind of like a quasi Uber scam where like you're left with like the tail end of all these, not just taxes, but loans for your truck, and you're not paid overtime or that for your the hours and hours and hours that you spend on the road. So obviously it's fucked to be a trucker, and they had a bunch of really intense grievances that they could air. That's why I was a little like head scratching about like why the vaccine was the like big fucking thing. It's like I would have loved to see it be more about like capitalism and whatever, but to each their own. We also said it was fucked up that Justin Trudeau was going full on authoritarian, freezing their assets, seizing their bank accounts. Like obviously that would come around to bite any leftist in the ass ever. Of course, that's a no-brainer. Nobody should support that if you call yourself a leftist. Excuse me. It makes me sick to think about that. No, I'm kidding. So yeah, on top of all of that, I think that we also have to point out that we're all a little envious that we didn't get a Medicare for all protest. That was one of the things that I remember you pointing out a lot, Gavin, is how we're like all a little bit envious, and we wouldn't be being truthful if we didn't say like, God damn it, I wish we had something like that to shut down the motherfucker in the United States and say, give us healthcare, or get fucked.
100%, 100%. So yeah, check out the whole interview if you guys get the time. I thought it was a good one. Props to Jimmy for putting that on. Having Chris on is always great guest. Yeah, I was about to get to this. Thank you, Kelly, for the 1999. Really appreciate that generous super chat, Kelly. Thank you so much. Did you guys see the video of Maxine Waters yesterday telling homeless people to go home? Yeah, the Dems are going to lose on a monumental scale. I did see this, Kelly, and we can actually take a look, because this is some real insanity. And as you say, just completely indicative of the Democrats' position right now and their optics.
My God, I couldn't believe this when I saw it was real on Twitter.
And by the way, this is someone that the media will have you believe is like a far left member of Congress, just so you know. But yeah, let's take a look.
For VP at one point.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, let's take a look here.
Did they move another location where they're taking ads? Is there any more locations than this one?
No, it might have been just so many people out here.
1 minute.
I want everybody to go home. And I want
We don't got no home. Okay. That's why we here. Miss Miss Waters, can you home we gonna go to?
just a moment.
Just a moment.
Nothing is going to happen here today. Nothing is going to happen anymore today.
So what about
But
all these names?
what we're gonna that's what give
Well, can you leave
Excuse me.
Can you leave?
That's why I'm here. That's why I'm here. And so I will be downtown with Lassa. I will get the housing authority. That's why they came out here today. I made them come out here. And I'm gonna go.
And you need to know why they're failing, because Blanca Jimenez repeated, we gave her several meeting requests for you concerning this in Lhasa for years. And now they're sitting
There's
here.
nobody in Washington who works for their people in harder than I do.
I believe you.
I don't want to hear that.
I believe you. So can we finish though? Work with me.
No.
Work with me so we can house people. That's what I'm doing.
I do every day.
You do every day. I'm still on the damn
the
street.
money that you got
She's 7
and
years, she doesn't cash out.
in Washington, D.C. I will continue to work. I will get into the no more about you today.
They would never know about
Yeah. It's hard to look worse than that. Especially, I don't know if Maxine Waters is up for re-election. I don't know if she's up for re-election in the midterms, but oh my God, that was a bummer to watch for sure. Because we said nice things about Maxine Waters in the past. That was not a good look. I don't know if we said nice things about her, but
I was like, she's usually pretty predictably terrible, but for sure. And you're saying it's hard to look worse. Well, someone accomplished that for sure, and that would be Mr. Eric Adams. I don't know if you've seen this clip going around, him awkwardly standing there at the club, and this is happening in the wake of his campaign of terror against the homeless in New York City. He announced plans a week or so ago to destroy every homeless encampment in New York City this week, with no plans to house the people evicted, mind you. And then after announcing said plans and beginning the, again, campaign of terror against these homeless folks, Eric Adams went to the club that you see in this video for an event sponsored by Wells Fargo to launch a new credit card for rich people to pay rent with. So if that doesn't tell you everything you need to know about the face and the state of the modern day Democratic Party, then I don't know what you need to see again besides that Maxine Waters clip that we just
Now
played.
I'm regretting never saying that maybe Maxine Waters would have been a better pick than Kamala. That was what I was referencing. I was like, I used to say like, oh, he could have picked literally anybody. And now I'm not. Although to be fair, Kamala has said some horrible fucking things. But anyway. One more quick Eric Adams thing, just while we have this aside. I pulled this up too, in case the opportunity became ripe. Let me see here. Oh yes. This is exactly what we need. Fuck housing people, keeping people safe, giving them any kind of money or government assistance. Let me go ahead and just play this little clip on the future of fire safety and rescue. And you know they're going to put weapons on this and turn it into a cop. That's all I have to say about this. Look at him using it like a remote control. You think this is just to put for fire safety and rescue? My fucking ass. You don't spend that much money on fire safety and fucking ass and rescue. No way, bro. This is going to be used to expand the police state, and I don't fuck with this chappy looking motherfucker. I don't know, man. This is too much for me. What did you think of this, Gav?
Yeah, that robot's gonna be the last thing you ever fucking see if you attend the wrong protest. That's what I have to say about that shit. That shit's terrifying. And New York City was already gonna roll out police robot dogs not even a year or so ago. Luckily, they decided not to because of intense backlash, obviously. But now that Eric Adams is mayor and he's a complete fucking fascist, I don't even mean that hyperbolically. Like, this guy's literally a fascist. Of course they're going to start using them in the police force. Of course they're going to start using those robots to terrorize homeless people, terrorize who they deem criminals, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, that's what we're looking at in New York City. And it's not inconsequential. Eric Adams is considered someone that could go on to run for president and, win the Democratic Party primary as a presidential candidate. That's something that's openly talked about in the higher echelons of the party. And he's exactly who they want to be their guy. Eric Adams is who the Democratic Party wants to be the future of the Democratic Party. He's a cop. He has he checks off the identity politics check marks. Again, he's pro police. He's pro business. He's even pro crypto. This is the face and future of the Democratic Party. And again, it's not like we have a strong left flank that's fighting back and resisting this in a proper way. Our boy Khanna, who's considering running for president himself, is laughably performing right now as any sort of a left flank or any sort of a resistance or bulwark to this corporate neoliberalism. In fact, he's out here defending it and apologizing for it almost on a seemingly daily basis now. So again, that is our left flank. It's pathetic to see and just completely disgraceful by every metric. Thank you, Victor, for the $4.99. The left should have jumped in and co-opted the protest, maybe joined the protest and convinced people to broaden the economic demands, referring to the truckers in Canada. I mean, perhaps, Victor, I think maybe it would have had to arise in a different circumstance. I don't know how successful a leftist movement would have been at like just going in there and being like, actually, now we're protesting for these things. I don't know if the truckers would have been on board with that, but I definitely understand the sentiment and agree with it to a certain extent. So thanks for the comment in the super chat.
Yeah, thanks, Victor. And yeah, I understand the sentiment behind like, okay, here we have this opportunity where there is, a halt in, production or the movement of goods, in this case, transportation. How do we co-opt that to make it meaningfully beneficial to all working class people? I think it's not a bad way to be thinking. So yeah, definitely thank you for that super chat and that point, Victor. And yeah, diverse oppressors won't save us. And that is, that's the perfect clap either for, either of those clips that we just reacted to. Although I will say really quickly, because we're talking about New York City and how terrible it is, I did want to take like 30 seconds and throw this up there on the screen. It does look like the Staten Island at Amazon. Yeah, technically the final vote is tomorrow, or like the final count, but yeah, it's going to pass. They're up by like 400 votes. So I thought that was based, and at least a little bit of good news for everybody coming out of New York City. People are still out there fighting the good fight with no help from AOC. She wasn't there. No squad members showed up. None. Not even the ones that were representing the the workers, the Staten Island workers there. Who would that be? Is it Mondaire? No, not Mondaire Jones. Jamal Bowman and AOC, I believe, would be the two squad members that, or maybe it is.
There's Jamal Bowman, but I don't think AOC is in that district.
She's not, but she has a lot of workers that are there, which is why she originally committed to be there. But either way, both of them kind of bailed last minute.
Right. But this is hugely monumental news. Such a, insane achievement pulled off by Christian Smalls, of course, who's the president of the Amazon labor worker-led union based in Staten Island. But obviously all the people that put in the work on the ground there. Chris is just kind of the face of the movement. He's been on the Vanguard, friend of the show. So, unbelievable what they have pulled off in Staten Island, seemingly. Just an absolutely monumental result, especially if you remember the disappointing initial result in Bessemer, which is going to be revoted on, luckily. But still, I think that a lot of people were worried after that result that, the air would kind of leak out of the tires, so to speak. The momentum from the movement would be gone and that people wouldn't want to pursue unionization going forward at Amazon facilities. But clearly that is not the case because, again, under the leadership of Christian Smalls, the union looks like it's going to go through. It looks like the workers have voted in favor of this union in Staten Island. It looks like the lead will hold. And of course, we'll find out official confirmation tomorrow, as you said, Zach. But all indicators point to a success here, which is just unbelievable news. And it looks like they pulled it off by a pretty big margin, too. It doesn't even look like it was particularly close. So, this is a great, great success for workers at Amazon.
Yeah, and it looks like I might have been wrong. I think it is Mondaire Jones whose district that is. I just want to make sure because I think Crystal Ball tweeted out it right here.
Really? Mondaire Jones? I didn't think he was Staten Island.
See, I know if you click on the tweet below it, she responds to herself. It says, "I have to add, it's pathetic that not one member, including those like AOC and Mondaire Jones who represent these workers, offered a single ounce of support." So I thought it was Jamal Bowman too, but maybe because I thought Mondaire Jones was like but I don't fucking know. I get them all confused. There's a lot of them in New York. I know that.
The only reason why I think it's Jamal Bowman is because he's always posting shit about Wu-Tang Clan. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, there might be a couple too. It might not just be one. It looks like there's a lady named Nicole Maliotakis that's representative there. So anyway, either way, all of the progressives, all of the squad members, so to speak, not just the ones from New York, Bernie Sanders himself, they should have been out there leading the charge on behalf of this movement. They were shamefully absent. The union seemingly pulled it off without them. Honestly, maybe it's a good thing they kept their fucking distance. Maybe people have such a poor taste in their mouth from what they've seen from squad members that their involvement or participation wouldn't actually have helped these union organizers who clearly knew what they were doing. That being said, it's still shameful that they did not show up for this union when it mattered to help do what they could to promote their movement. But still,
you were right. It's Jamal Bowman.
Yeah. I was right, like always, guys. No,
giving you props because I was like, I'm pretty sure Mondaire Jones is like Westchester, where Kyle Kalinske lives, or like Rochester or something like. Anyway,
yeah, that's the other reason I knew it wasn't Mondaire's, because I remember Kyle talking about how Mondaire Jones was his congressperson, and I know for a fact that Kyle's not in Staten Island. He's in a bit bougier area of the New York City metropolis. So anyway, that being said, like I said, huge props to Christian Smalls and all the union organizers that made this a reality. It's truly insane. It's not something I was necessarily expecting, but I'm so proud to see this happen. So yeah, huge shout out to those organizers. This is a great update in the movement for unionization at Amazon nationwide, obviously not just in New York. And
first
thank you.
One ever, big deal.
Yeah, exactly. So just monumental. Thank you also, Kush Renata, for the $2. Democrat/squad member pops up to steal kudos. What are we talking about?
Oh, he says $10. He's like betting money that one of them will try and sneak in and pretend they had something to fucking do with.
Yeah, honestly, that's not impossible. But thanks for the $2. Really appreciate it. Thank you, Hysteric Raider, as well. I know we're supposed to hate Russia, but even though they don't have robo-dogs next to sharks with freaking laser beams attached to their heads. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, honestly, how far is that off? Once you start introducing this AI robotic bullshit, I mean, basically, the thing is that increasingly a lot of our military operations are done with drones and robots. I mean, if you think about literally the drone program, responsible, by the way, for a 90% civilian death rate, I mean, much of the war that's being waged right now is via drones and automated technology, which of course, makes it even further removed humanity-wise from these atrocities. It's easier to press a button that's going to kill someone from halfway across the world than it is to point a gun and shoot someone, right? So, that makes it even worse. It makes it even less human, etc. But thanks for the $5, Hysteric Raider.
Hale, who's currently fucking anguishing in prison, was the one that exposed the entire drone warfare. So always got to remember, show solidarity to that guy. But also thank you to Gabe Newell. China is the future. Can I kick the Dems' butts now? You can do whatever you want. China is the future. We're not the boss of. I just thought that was hilarious. Kyle sure does look like he's from Staten Island. I was like, well, you're not wrong there. Although
He looks like he's trying to look like he grew up in Staten Island.
all I always think of, never. I don't know much about Staten Island, so I guess I shouldn't say.
It's considered one of like the harder areas of New York City, like, you know, a little bit more impoverished and such. So anyway, thanks so much for the
All I know is the Wu-Tang Clan.
Yeah. Anyway, thanks for the $9.99, Gabe. Really appreciate the donation. And before we move on to our next story, we're about to get into the Khanna interview on bad faith and Briahna Joy Gray's excellent pushback that she provided to some of his answers. I did want to quickly share my screen and talk about this because I was referencing it a second ago. This is the Ilhan Omar's Waluigi. This is a woman who's running against Ilhan Omar, a conservative Republican, running to defeat Ilhan Omar, mother of 3, U.S. Army veteran, Muslim, and unapologetically American. So the Republicans literally just found who they would consider to be like the conservative version of Ilhan Omar, and they're going to try to hoist that on her district as if the people are stupid enough to just be like, oh, we don't support Ilhan Omar for her policies. We don't support Ilhan Omar for the things she said and stood for in the past. Not that Omar is perfect, by the way. Obviously she's not, but still, to just assume that, oh, we're just going to put this other, you know, black Muslim woman and people won't know the difference. It's totally insulting and hilarious, obviously. And of course, this woman has no actual chance of winning. Again, despite her flaws, Ilhan Omar is, you know, still fairly charismatic and I think has a pretty good relationship with her constituency for the most part in her district. But yeah, like I said, this is the Waluigi of Ilhan Omar.
Yeah, that's definitely going to be a winning strategy. Just bare knuckle. Yeah. Well, we'll see how that works out for them. That's something.
Yeah. But yeah, let's move on to the next story. I did want to talk a little bit about the new interview on the Bad Faith podcast that we were just referencing. This was a great interview that Briahna Joy Gray conducted with none other than Representative Khanna on the issue of Ukraine and Russia, some of his recent comments to Max Blumenthal. And that's actually a good place to start, I think. If you guys remember, we reported on Max Blumenthal's confrontation with Khanna on the streets of Washington, D.C. This probably happened 2 weeks ago or so. It was a pretty good piece of just on the ground journalism. We gave credit to Max for, you know, having the balls to go up and confront Khanna in the way that he did and ask him a very substantive question. So we're going to get Briahna Joy Gray here asking Khanna if he stands by his comments, not just in this little interview, but also on Twitter that he made subsequently. Definitely an interesting little exchange, one of 3 that we're going to play. But let's dive right into this. Unless you had any context to provide, Zach, let's just take it from the top.
Earlier this month, reporter Max Blumenthal asked you a similar line of questions about why Ukraine, why send weapons to Ukraine, and why intervene here when there's so many other conflicts in the global context that America chooses not to intervene in. How can we trust that this is something other than a strategic choice rather than a moral one, especially given the United States' long-term involvement in the region?
Prices are already going up massively because of the sanctions, inflation's going up, and that's all to fight Russia. I mean, that's the message Biden and his people are sending. Don't you think? I mean, do you think Americans? What skin in the game do Americans have for Ukraine?
Americans have the skin in the game to stand up for freedom, to stand up for human rights. We've always done that as a nation, and we want to make sure that we stand up for Europe and NATO, and we stand up to bullies. I mean, people see on television Putin killing children, killing mothers. I mean, it's horrific. And we as an America, we are the greatest nation in the world. We've always stood up for freedom. We stand up for human rights.
So raising inflation and raising oil prices for freedom,
I don't think that's connected. I think the reason that people are paying $5 at the pump and $6 at the pump is because these big oil companies are profiting billions of dollars.
You responded with a since deleted tweet.
By the way, we should point out that, and most
Far-
people already did, that is indistinguishable from like Bush era neocon talking points. Literally indistinguishable. Just pointing that out.
Well, that's what Max Blumenthal pointed out to Ro Khanna on Twitter, which seemingly triggered Ro Khanna to the point that he deleted the tweet that he's, by the way, about to deny that he deleted. I have the receipts, though. Don't worry. We'll pull them up. But yeah, he's about to deny deleting this tweet when, in fact, he does, or he has.
Billions of dollars.
You responded with a since deleted tweet that said, the far left's refusal to condemn the immoral and illegal Putin invasion is appalling. It's nihilistic relativism. I stand on my words in this exchange and reject Max Blumenthal and RT Talking Points, where he's a contributor. I have human rights progressive approach to FP, to foreign policy. Do you stand by that tweet? Why did you delete that tweet?
do. I don't think it's deleted. I stand by it. I think it's still up there because I stand by it. It was in response. Max put out something calling me a neocon because of my position on Ukraine. And I thought that was ridiculous. I mean, anyone who knows my career, my advocacy against the first Iraq war, my advocacy against the invasion of Libya, my advocacy in Yemen would certainly not describe me as a neocon. He put that tweet out and it was in response to that tweet that I put it up, but it should still be up. I think people can just go on Twitter and find it. And I absolutely stand by it 100% because I thought his characterization that I believe that Ukraine should be able to defend itself in a just war, that somehow that makes me a neocon, was just wrong.
Not defend itself, have America defend it.
Yeah, so as I said, that tweet was deleted. Hate to say, Ro Khanna, and I'm a little bit confused as to why he denied that. Like maybe he just actually forgot that he deleted it. But like we know that you didn't, bro. Here's the original tweet. This is from an account called Neoliberal Tears. Says Briahna Joey Gray confronting Ro Khanna on bad faith for denigrating Max Blumenthal is in an absolutely disgusting tweet. He denies deleting unconvincingly, healed a part of my lefty heart. Anyway, so shout out to that account for posting the receipts. But yeah, as you can see, it was in fact deleted. Not just that, but I think the follow-up tweet as well, where he went on to essentially espouse more kind of State Department talking points, kind of this weird American exceptionalism that Brie pushes him on. So anyway, I think it's interesting that he denied that or denied, deleting it. And speaking of deleted tweets, by the way, there's one that's been going around for a while now on the internet. I think this is it right here. Yeah, this is another deleted tweet of Ro Khanna's from 2018, where he says, ever since the Orange Revolution began under President Bush, the U.S. has been complicit in the rehabilitation and spread of neo-Nazis in Ukraine. Enough is enough. Our government must stand up to the Azov Battalion and other fascist groups. And Briahna questioned him a little bit about this in the full interview, which again, I highly recommend you guys check out. But she questioned him a little bit and asked about his stance on the Azov Battalion, to which he replied that, yes, I still, disagree with arming the Azov Battalion, and I still stand against that. He even references a piece of legislation that he passed to seemingly prevent that from happening. But again, why did you delete this original tweet if that's your position? Why did you delete this very accurate sentiment about arming neo-Nazis if now, you're still claiming to have the same position? It's very bizarre. And it's like, you're a public figure, dude. People should have the right to know how you were thinking about this stuff in 2018 and how you're thinking about it now. I just don't quite understand why he is so resistant at this point to espouse this opinion, which is, again, obviously accurate, obviously the position of any anti-interventionist that's learned anything from our American history and what arming these sort of radical resistance groups has led to in just about every occasion that we've engaged in it. We always have some justification for arming extremist rebel groups, but how often does it actually turn out very well? How often is the end result actually what we want it to be? Very, very few, or very often it's the exact opposite. So, it's just disappointing to me that Ro Khanna would be so wishy-washy on the subject matter. That being said, as I mentioned, check out the full interview. The guy does a decent job articulating his position, despite my massive disagreements with it. I think the best thing you could say about Khanna is that he seems to actually believe what he says, and at least he will go on a show like Bad Faith to, be interrogated as to his actual beliefs here. You can't say the same thing about AOC, for example, or pretty much any of the other squad members. So again, props to Khanna for going out there and explaining his position and to standing up to pretty intense interrogation. But then again, it's also like, what are you doing here, bro? And you have to think about the fact too that there's these reports out that he's considering running for president or challenging, the Democratic establishment if he's not already part of it in 2024 in the event that Biden doesn't run. So I think that's important to consider too, and it kind of colors the way that some of these statements are coming off and some of his actions are coming off, such as, for example, deleting this tweet.
Yeah, it's so weird. We talked about this when the Max Blumenthal clip kind of first came out a little bit about how the kind of de-evolution of Khanna, right? How he went from being this, Bernie Sanders advisor, one of the guys that we would hold up as kind of a pillar of the best we've got in Congress, right? Don't agree with the guy on everything, but at least he seemed to have conviction. You mentioned that when you were speaking, at least he would be there to, well, fuck the way that everybody's talking about, at least me and Rand Paul will put up this bipartisan piece of legislation to try and, cut off the Saudi, arms trade, perpetuate a literal massacre, a genocide in Yemen right now, the starving of children, the prevention of medical aid, all of this, okay, great. He's doing that. He's working with Bernie Sanders. He calls himself a capitalist, which gives me the heebie-jeebies, and I don't trust him for it. But, okay, maybe he's still a good guy. That's all just felt like such a ruse to me. Feels like career opportunism to me. A lot of people, I think, calculated in Congress, not a lot of people, but like a certain kind of congressman, calculated that they could really benefit their careers by getting behind Bernie Sanders. And now that they see that that's no longer a pathway to success, I think they've kind of reformed themselves. And I think that Khanna's kind of taking on a more Obama-style politic where, he's willing to play the chess game. Like Khanna's trying to play chess, not checkers, but we're still a few steps ahead of him because, he tried to play some kind of character that he wasn't, and we still have all of those receipts, right? So you bring up the fact that now he's trying to he's one of the people that are trying to undermine the role of the Azov Battalion. He wants us to fund Ukraine. He wants those militia groups, those that are on the front lines of the contested territories in Ukraine, to have U.S. weapons and do all of that. And we could debate the fucking minutia of how big is the Ukrainian neo-Nazi problem. Clearly it's a big problem. Do you remember that video that Aaron Mate tweeted out of Zelensky making joke after joke after joke at that one award show about how Mein Kampf is sold out all over Ukraine, so you can't get it there? I've been fiendishly scrolling through Twitter trying to find that shit. It looks like it's been scrubbed from the fucking earth. I'm I know that Aaron Mate wouldn't have deleted it, so I'm just gonna keep fucking scrolling until the end of this live stream and see if I can find it at some point, because it really reveals the extent to which that's an issue. So I get bad vibes and also just dishonest vibes by somebody who would dig back into their tweets almost 4 years to the height of the Trump presidency, when again he was indulging in trying to get those cheap dunks on Donald Trump, which is odd too, because you have all of this Donald Trump is not being tough enough on Russia. It's because he's Putin's little bitch. But at the end of the day, they didn't fucking try and occupy and invade Ukraine under Donald Trump. So all of this kind of stuff makes you scratch your head a little bit and say, Khanna, if you're as smart of a guy as you seem, you should be able to see through all of this. So my only real takeaway is that you're deceiving me, or you're trying to balance out this weird gain of careerism and pivoting and maybe I'll run for president, or maybe I'll run for Senate and really build my political clout up. And the Democratic Party just will not allow him to do that unless he goes out of his way to completely what's the word I'm trying to look at?
Affirm their talking points.
And just show that he's cleansed himself of any of his progressive days. You know what I mean? That repention to the corporate oligarchy is kind of what I'm thinking that he's doing here. He's just running out, completely debasing himself, so that then they know exactly how committed he is to them when he tries to repurpose all of his progressive credentials to try and fool us down the line. That's the vibe I get, but I could just be pessimistic.
Well, you know what else? What else will make you scratch your head is that he seemingly supports our response to the Russia invasion pretty much to a T. He's signed off on all of Biden's sanctions, on all of our weapon sales to Ukraine, etc. But let's remember, this is the guy who did not support BDS. So you're going to support boycotting, divesting, and sanctioning the hell out of Russia, not to mention shipping massive amounts of arms to Ukraine. But when it comes to our enabling our funding of Israel's apartheid state in Palestine, you seemingly don't think a similar response is warranted or justified or moral. What the hell, bro? I mean, that's a pretty clear sign to me that this guy is just, trying to have the best optics as possible for, again, as you said, Zach, more political runs in the future, a presidential campaign, because there's nothing more toxic than being associated with the Palestinian liberation movement. If you're trying to ascend in the Democratic Party, you have to basically be as pro-Israel as possible. Even people like Bernie Sanders, who I was a big supporter of, was not as strong on that front as I would have liked him to be. So yeah, I mean, there's no one you want as your enemy less than the military industrial complex if your goal is to rise the ranks of the Democratic Party, and Khanna seems to understand that. By the way, Zach, I did find the clip that you were talking about of Zelensky. We can play this real quick, because here is Zelensky's commentary on the Nazi problem before becoming president of Ukraine, but rather when he was still a comedian, an entertainer. And of course, comedy is what it is, but there's usually some truth in comedy. That's why it's funny in the first place. And you can take a look here as, again, what his tone was about the Nazi problem in Ukraine before becoming part of the political establishment, the head of the political establishment. Let's take a look. This is mind-blowing.
Yeah, fucking insane.
Для нас, европейцев, это нормально. Сегодня наш президент, самый главный, который у нас самый главный президент, Барак Обама.
So he's making a joke that Obama's their real president.
Скоро вступим в НАТО. Пока, естественно, на правах американского прихвостня. Если есть возможность, друзья, вышлите, пожалуйста, мне книгу Гитлера «Майн кампф». А то у нас разметают. Бывало, утром выхожу на балкон и начинаю делать зарядку. От сердца к солнцу, вот так. Ну, что я вам рассказываю, вы же так...
This your guy lib Twitter?
Для нас, европейцев, это нормально. Сегодня наш президент, самый главный, который...
Anyway, yeah, it's pretty mind-blowing. And again, you see the fact that now people, including Zelensky, obviously are trying to downplay this Nazi problem in their country. And anyone that talks about it is, oh, you're just repeating Russian talking points. You're just justifying what Putin's doing. This is what Russia wants you to say. But again, here's Zelensky pre-war, pre-becoming president. I don't know exactly what year this is in, but still, he's very obviously joking about the fact that it's a known issue. The fact that Russia, or that Ukraine, is infested with this sort of Nazi ideology. And again, does that justify what Putin's doing? No, obviously not. I'm not saying that it does, but let's not pretend it can't be discussed. Let's not pretend it can't be acknowledged when it very clearly is a reality.
Yeah, and that was one of the clearest examples that I could think of okay, guys, like, this is an actual issue here. So whenever people like Khanna scrub their tweets from back in the day where they were talking about a Ukrainian had a serious neo-Nazi problem, show them their current president. Dude was literally making like fucking Hail Hitler jokes and fucking all kinds of shit. Point blank. And also, I also thought it bolstered the claims and the arguments that were made by guys like Glenn Greenwald on our show that a lot of people were pushing back on, saying like, it's unfair to say that this was a puppet government that the United States installed. What are you talking about? Their literal actual current president was talking about it, how their real president was Barack Obama. So this had to have been sometime between like probably 2012 and 2016 when this was recorded. But then also how they're going to enter NATO as American henchmen, of course. Like, that's a literal joke that he makes. So it's so transparent that exactly what, people like us have been arguing, that, Russia was pissed off that the United States was using Ukraine as like a fucking proxy military base to, fuck with Russia, do whatever they wanted with Russia, have insight into Russia. It's the same reason we like having Israel in the Middle East, right? We like having a foothold places. But that was what it gave us, a foothold right on Russia's door. Russia obviously didn't like that, but and again, like, we're not simps for Russia. Like Putin is committing crimes of aggression, but like, let's not have an unnuanced view here. Like, let's not eliminate history. Let's not divorce ourselves from reality to make it like easier for us to understand the situation. Like, this is complicated geopolitics. We have to look at this from around the from like a bird's eye view, I guess, and look at all of the angles. And Ro Khanna is just simply not interested in doing that. And whenever anybody's not interested in giving like a complete, honest analysis of a situation, you can usually tell they're full of shit, which is, again, red flag.
Yeah, and I will say the only serious piece of credit that I can give Ro Khanna, because we're obviously shitting all over the guy for good reason, the one piece of credit I will give Ro Khanna is that he is one of the few Congress people that's come out pretty strongly against no-fly zones, and that is important given the fact that the media has just been relentlessly trying to push the Biden administration to even further to the brink of war, nuclear war, with a no-fly zone. So, I do respect the fact that Ro Khanna has been opposed to that, but it seems like he's okay with just about everything up until that point, which is still problematic, which is still escalatory, and in my opinion, simply unwarranted from bad faith actors such as the United States empire. But as you see here, it does look like Briahna Joy Gray will be talking with Max Blumenthal himself later tonight on her call-in episode. So I'm excited to see how that goes. And also just shout out to Briahna Joy Gray, one of the few podcasts that will truly, host voices from across the leftist spectrum, everyone from Ro Khanna to Max Blumenthal. In my opinion, that's real intellectual.
Two motherfuckers from the Atlantic.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, that's my opinion of, real intellectual and journalistic honesty, is having on all the perspectives to, ask the tough questions to and get the full spectrum of thought on these issues. So many podcasts only want to have on guests that are going to reaffirm what they already believe, create an echo chamber, etc. And Bad Faith is just simply not one of those podcasts. So I do really respect that, and it increases my enjoyment factor quite a bit as a listener myself, and my value that I get from the show, because again, it's important to hear all perspectives. It's important to hear all perspectives interrogated by a thoughtful host that knows what she's talking about. So huge props to Briahna for yet another great interview.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the other clips or whatever that I really wanted to get into that I just thought was pretty based and honestly very indicative of kind of the prevailing sentiment on the progressive left, the one that Ro Khanna seems to have really turned his back on. Like we mentioned earlier in this conversation, there was a time when Ro Khanna felt one of us. He kind of felt like he was a part of that whole Bernie movement. And of course, one of the things that I thought was kind of positive about the Bernie, experience both in 2016 and 2020 was that, everybody felt like, regardless of this, which side of the political faction you were on, we were all coming together because we were like, Bernie's our best shot. Like, we've got to bet on this one together. Like, let's fucking push the ball forward. Like, we're all getting behind Bernie. Like, I have some disagreements with like Lance from the Serfs, but that guy was like a hardcore Bernie guy. Have some differences with other people who may have been behind Bernie in the past. But we all fucking got behind it, right? And we were pushing the ball forward. Now it seems like Ro Khanna has pivoted to where he's really more identifying with the like MSNBC crowd, the the more neoliberal,
the Liz Warren. I'm going to pretend to be a progressive, but I'm not actually going to challenge power in any serious way.
Exactly. I took the words. Yes, exactly. The Elizabeth Warren kind of faux leftist left, right? The Ayanna Pressley left, kind of that kind of a deal, right? Like, yes, we do support some things that, the rest of the like super stodgy Joe Manchin Democrats do not support, but we are not in favor of meaningful change, and we will undermine those progressive ambitions that you have at the end of the day. Now, Ro Khanna just seems so perplexed that people would be fed up with that kind of bullshit at this point, right? Like even Bernie Sanders, we were just breaking Ro Khanna over the coals for his position on Ukraine. Like Bernie Sanders hasn't been fucking 100% out here talking about how he doesn't want to send any weapons to Ukraine. He's been much too silent on this. In fact, when he has opened his mouth, I wasn't super happy about it either. So I just think that it's nice to see Briahna Joy Gray out here sitting down with Ro Khanna and breaking the cold hard truth to him that we don't give a shit if there's 5 more fucking Democratic senators in Congress.
Yeah, absolutely. This is another great clip, so we can go ahead and watch this one.
Max put out something calling me a neocon because of my position on Ukraine, and I thought that was ridiculous.
It wasn't saying you are a neocon. It's saying that this is language that sounds like what a neocon would say to justify any number of interventions.
When people say the United States role, what specifically was the United States role?
The hard evidence that most people point to most concretely is leaked calls of Victoria Nuland.
I think Yates is the guy.
Why should voters believe that electing more Democrats is going to change anything?
You don't think that if we had a few more Democratic senators, that would make a difference? Because that's really been...
I don't. I am troubled by the rebranding of what it means to be progressive and what the progressive agenda is. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez recently gave an interview where she said the Democrats are in trouble for not pursuing some of these popular agenda items. You disagreed.
Yeah, so great line of questioning there once again. And I think that his answer here is just specifically pathetic after we saw the total collapse that went on during Build Back Better, how folks like Ro Khanna specifically got totally and completely played by the likes of Joe Manchin in that situation. So it's just so naive for them to continue down this path, to not have like an adjustment of strategy, a shift in understanding of the dynamics at play here. No, we're just going to keep pursuing the same strategy election cycle after election cycle with no results to show for it. I think not only does it show an incredible misunderstanding of strategy, but it also just proves how out of touch people like Ro Khanna are with the movement which, elected them in the first place. Ro Khanna technically was elected before the Justice Democrat kind of wave of 2016 and 2018. But that being said, he's still, considered part of that group, right? So, it really shows an out of touch. It just shows how out of touch he is with the actual online left specifically, but the left as a whole in this country, which of course would have preferred the progressives handle the Build Back Better negotiations in a much different, much more intense and aggressive way, which he very clearly did not. And as I've said earlier, you guys should check out the interview that Ro Khanna did on TYT. He did a couple decent interviews, or rather they did a couple decent interviews with him. Don't often give credit to TYT, but that is like the one serious piece of journalism they've produced in the last year or so, is a couple hard-hitting interviews with Ro Khanna where Cenk completely exposed how weak and, ineffectual and feckless Khanna's strategy and understanding of that entire situation was. So yeah, this guy is just completely disappointing, if you ask me.
Remember when he tried to simp for the decoupling of the Build Back Better legislation, and it was like, oh, we're gonna pass the bipartisan bill first, and this is really gonna work, guys. I trust Representative Jayapal to get this deal done. I trust her leadership. Okay, I think we are. I think we're gonna band together and get this one done. Like, no, we're not. It was fucking gonna be. It was so obvious. It was so pathetically miserable an idea that it was doomed to fail from jump. There was absolutely no discussion. It was like, we decouple this. You give a fake win to Joe Biden, Joe Manchin, and Kirsten Sinema, or whoever the fuck else it's going to be. I don't care if you have to have 5, 6, 7 hated ass motherfuckers. They're going to open up their big ass wallets. Bunch of lobbyists are going to take a forklift and drive it in there. And then their positions are going to change, right? I mean, Kirsten Sinema was a fucking Green Party member at one point in her life. You think money doesn't talk? People are going to fucking change. You can't trust any of these fuckers. So no, I think that Brie is 100% correct here when she says that she doesn't think electing a few more Democratic senators would make a difference. No, I think a few more Democratic senators would get bought the fuck off, and the people would get hosed again, and that's why nothing good ever happens. That's why he couldn't pass a fucking $15 minimum wage increase. Oh, the Senate parliamentary, get the fuck out of here, guys. It's all a game. And Briahna Joy Gray is one of the best at sitting composed and, just looking these fucking people in the eyes and being like, why are you lying to us? Why are you doing this? Maintaining that professional energy so that we can come here very unprofessionally and just roast the shit out of people like Ro Khanna who are just so fucking miserably out of touch with their constituents. And honestly, it's a shame, because at one point I really did think that the guy I made a joke about how we said nice things about Maxine Waters, like offhandedly, like Maxine Waters would have been better than fucking Kamala Harris. No, Ro Khanna is somebody I've actually, had good words for. I think he's been on the money on some issue, but I just feel like he's getting further and further away from those good ideas and getting more and more sucked into that web of neoliberalism and that phony progressivism that just, I don't know.
I mean, it's just indicative of where the entire Bernie Sanders movement is in the post Bernie Sanders era, which is completely and utterly cucked. No real fire left, no real gas in the tank, just this kind of pathetic impression of leftism, of progressivism, feigning outrage over issues occasionally. But for the most part, just going along to get along and letting the Democrats eat your lunch every single time, putting up a phony fake resistance. And then in the face of any sort of pushback, completely and utterly folding every single time. So yeah, it's totally disappointing. But at least we know where we're at, right? At least, he's not tricking anyone.
Yep. Yep. I guess that's true. The fox is no longer in the hen house.
Exactly. And that probably does conclude today's live stream, Zach, unless there's anything else you're dying to discuss. Had a really good discussion, though. Lots of very fertile topics to dig into.
Yeah, no, I think that's about it for the day. Honestly, a bit of a bummer note to end on. Things aren't looking great. Not looking up for the progressive movement. But thanks for everybody that tuned in. God, we were kind of eating shit algorithmically today when we first got started, but it picked up a bit. Thanks everybody that tuned in. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell. YouTube's on that crackdown bullshit, and we want you to hear us yap. So be sure to hit all of those buttons, do all of those things that everybody that's ever told you on YouTube to do. And yeah, thanks and special shout out to all the patrons, the Vanguardians, you guys make our world go round, all that shit. You're all comrades in our hearts. But yeah, thanks for tuning in.
Yeah, huge shout out to the patron community. Thank you so much, guys, for the support on Patreon. The link is in the description below. So if you would like to have your name up here on the shout out screen, which we throw up at the beginning and end of every single live stream, then you can hit up that link in the description. It is one of the perks we offer the patrons. So again, just a huge shout out. We would not be able to do this show without you guys and your support. So a genuine, sincere thank you from Zach and I really means everything to the show. And it makes us continues to make us able to produce this content. So thank you so much, guys. Really, really appreciate everyone for tuning in today. Not just the patrons, of course. A special shout out to the patrons, but a huge shout out to everyone for tuning in, regardless of your level of support. Even if you hate our fucking guts, still glad to see you here. Thanks for tuning in to hear out our perspective on this wonderful Thursday. But yeah, we're probably going to leave you guys there. Hope you have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you around.